moving on. Number 2. You guys mentioned a little bit about reamping in episode 34. What's reamping? How do you do it?
It's when you take a signal, maybe like you had a DI or something else and you weren't really satisfied with the original cut of the sound, like the Marshall JCM 800 just wasn't cutting through. You actually take the signal and you run it out through a board, set a speaker up, all right, like an amp. You run the input of the amp. Like you step it down, of course, so it's guitar level. So take the level, run it into the input of the amp, and then the output, you either do like a real speaker, a 4x12, if you're lucky enough to have a real room, or you can do something what they call is just reamping the amp. So you get an actual amp tone, but you record DI straight into the DAW or the tape machine. So you won't get any speaker, but it gives you a lot hotter signal.
Right.
And you don't have as much coloration through the microphones, and that's good to actually blend things. So that's how you reamp something. There's also, Marshalls now make a lot of things with speaker emulation, which is basically like a 3-prong, XLR out that can go directly into a board.
Right. Cool. Okay, cool. Well, let's moving on.
I mean, it was, yeah, there's no, it's what it is.
It is what it is,
Now, if you want to talk about awesome things you can do with a speaker and a microphone, it's a whole nother story.
That's another whole other ball of wax. Okay, hey guys, how much guitar amp is too much for a small club? I want to play something I can play lead on that won't blow the house down in a 4-piece playing small stages. Any advice? Dave from St. Louis.
Dave, there's many variables here. For one, you may want to consider getting a wireless system just so you can walk around the room. Listen to your sound. Generally, the biggest problem for me is not having enough. If you buy like a really, really, really loud amp, you can always turn it down a little bit. But probably 30 to 50 watts is what you're going for, tube amp-wise. Solid state, maybe 50 to 100. Anything over that is probably going to be too much. What do you think, Britton?
Just because I play a lot of guitar too. I mean, like I do that stuff. I'm actually against wireless systems altogether.
Okay.
I think they're really horrible because they digitize the signal and then they send it back out. So you lose actually a lot of your bottom end scoop. And when you're playing stuff that's kind of heavier, you need that scoop so you get that bottom end. Okay. So I say stick to cables. I don't care how long the run is.
That being said, get a very long guitar cable.
Yeah.
And wander about the room. Listen. That's the best thing you can do is listen to your sound. Now,
well, especially it's a small club too, so really wireless doesn't factor in. I mean, I've seen wireless go out on big concert venue, stadiums.
That makes sense because like you're also dealing with a lot of like other factors. I mean, like most of those guys who are doing like like
well, you don't want to
Slayer.
go cable chasing.
Yeah,
in the middle of a performance.
Yeah, and then bands like Slayer, like they wire up their like 6 Marshalls, so and you can like just get all the tone that you've ever wanted.
Yeah.
So when you're traveling around with a single amplifier for a club, depending on the venue, like if you're doing any sort of like, if you're like, I'm a heavy rock musician, well, get ahead and get a cab because you'll save yourself a lot of problems in the end because, trust me, a 4x10 combo amp is not fun to carry upstairs.
Oh, right.
Hell no.
No.
But like, combo amps are cool, they're cheaper, and that you can get good tone out of them, like a Fender Twin, something like that. But just realize that like, volume is the name of the game at this point. The important thing is master volume for you. Small club guys need master volume. They don't need, it doesn't matter about the watts. You could get a 120 watt tube head. Everything else, as long as master volume, you can turn it down to whatever setting you want to get the crunch. That's why you stay away from like non-master volume Marshalls because like the only way you make them sound good is if you turn them
Crank
up.
them.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
But like that Vox AC15 is good for a small club if you're playing like
For those of you who can't see it, there's a Vox AC15 right off screen.
Sorry, I'm very visual, so I reference everything.
That's
But like, that's a 15 watt tube amp, so it's going to be loud. It's not a single-ended, which I know all you nerds will know what I'm talking about. All right, so the wattage, the 15 watts isn't as loud as you would like it to be, but it will be loud enough for pop rock trios, not like rock, but like like a Beatles cover band, a jazz trio, or a hot house blues kind of thing. Okay. If you want 30 watts, you can get it like AC30 will be as loud. There isn't much of a difference between like a 30 and a 50 watt amp. The loudness is going to get loud. Like I had a 30 watt AC30, and I also have a, Music Man HD 130, which is 130 watts that I actually do the triode, so I step it down to 60 watts because it's still massively loud. And I have a 40 watt amp peg, and they all sound, like in that wattage range, they all get just as loud as each other.
Oh, yeah.
Loud as hell.
Yeah, and you're just, so it's just like, that's not a factor. Now, the difference between 50 and 100, or 150 or 120, that's paramount, but you're also driving more speakers.
Sure.
So don't worry about that stuff. Just really look at, your tubes, like how much, what kind of tubes you want, you need to master volume, and how often you want to carry it up and downstairs.
And of course, the one thing that we didn't mention is, and I'm assuming because it's a small venue, you're not using a sound system. You know what I mean? But obviously, if you do have a sound guy and you're using a sound system, then all you really are concerned about is stage volume, meaning you just have to hear yourself and let the sound guy do the work. You know what I mean? So
no, it's paramount.
you got a sound guy, it's easy. You don't really need that loud of an amp. You just need something that you can hear yourself out of, and that's really it.
Yeah, see, I like personally playing smaller venues because I have the option of not using PA. And I prefer, personally for me, like the way I like playing my music is I want it as dirty as humanly possible right now. Like I'm really interested in this aesthetic. I do a lot of things just because I like aesthetics of things.
Well, yeah.
And so I want my amps to sound like my amps to the people in the club. So I actually ask people not to mic my amps and stuff and just turn it up as loud as it can go so they can hear it, which is really interesting for small venues when you got 40 or 50 people freaking out. But if I have to play a larger club, I know I'm going to have my stuff mic'd, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
So just keep wary of that sort of stuff. What are you going for as well? Like what kind of sound?
Well, there's that too. I mean, yeah, it depends on what. I mean, I've seen people run. You could run a guitar through a bass amp if you wanted to. If you wanted to sound
muffled.
Well,
I mean,
not that you would go
bright.
for that, but I'm saying that. You know what I'm saying? Like,
well, technically, there's not much of a difference between.
Yeah.
Tube amps aren't as different as you think. It's actually just in terms of wattage.
Stronger, right?
Yeah. Like a bass tube amp, like a Sun 300T, like is the same as a Bassman 300T, which is a bass amps, but they actually sound great for guitar.
Yeah.
Well, it takes more power to run the lower frequencies, right?
Yeah, but you get that punch, and like if you're playing guitar, you can imagine like really good high-end response with a nice tight punchy bass response from your lower strings.
Especially like rhythm guitar?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome. But then again, you can take a high watt DR103 and drive it through an Ampeg 4x10, and it'll sound freaking awesome. So like, that's a guitar head. It doesn't really matter. The bass guitar thing, it's like stringed instruments, keyboards, things like that. You can all run them through amps. It's just like you got to be wary of like what kind of response that you need. So you actually need to look at your speaker configuration more. Like I run 2 12s and 4 10s right now. I'm going to get 2 15s because I want more low-end response, but I don't need as much high-end response because those 4 10s move really fast.
Right.
So I got really punchy, like shrill overtones right there, and those 12 inches just drive at a nice constant pace. So that's something that you got to look at.